Hi everyone, here's the Book Chemist once again. Today I'm reviewing Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro, one of the most celebrated novels of the last 20 years. I must say that I have quite mixed feelings about the book. I finished it a couple of weeks ago and I was waiting for my feelings to settle a little, but I'm still a little mixed, and I'll try my very best to avoid any type of spoiler. At least I'll warn you if I'm about to spoil the plot in any, even just a tiny bit. What I'll say first and foremost is that here, more than ever, I wish I'd approached this book without any spoilers. The plot of it had actually been spoiled to me in the past, because I think it might have been quite a different experience if I'd approached it without knowing absolutely anything about what the book is about, what happens in it. I actually struggled a little to get into the flow of the narrative. The style, the structure of the tale in Never Let Me Go is actually very digressive. We have the narrator and protagonist who in the first couple of pages is talking about her present life, but then very soon starts reminiscing about her childhood, and then the story progresses from there in a fairly linear fashion throughout her childhood, teenage years and youth. But while the progression is quite linear, she's always referring back to anecdotes and events that happened around the time she's discussing. In order to explain what happened here, I have to refer to a thing that he said to me 2 weeks before, and then I didn't think was important at the time. I generally don't really mind when novels jump back and forth through time. If anything, I find that quite compelling because it keeps me on my toes. But the digressive style of Never Let Me Go felt a little verbose and ever so slightly pointless to me. Usually when you have these juxtaposed passages from centered around different characters or from different periods in the characters' lives, the effect is that it creates a beautiful contrast between two scenes that might have a lot or a little in common, and even just it keeps the flow of the narrative quite bouncy. It keeps it interesting. Whereas the consequence of this digressive style in Never Let Me Go was to make all of these various anecdotes and all of these various episodes, it flattened them out a little, and they all ended up feeling slightly uninteresting and ever so slightly pointless at times. That said, the book's reflections on childhood, on its strange rules, and on the strange alchemy of childhood friendships, where bullying can turn into a strong friendship and vice versa almost overnight, the way in which when you're a kid very silly concerns turn into these overblown preoccupations, all of that rang very true to me, and the book's reflections on childhood, its portrayal of childhood friendship, is definitely one of its most commendable features. I guess one of the main feelings of frustrations that I experienced with the book might well relate to its genius, to the aspect of it that is most significant. And it's impossible to talk about it without speaking in slightly more concrete terms about the plot. I'm still not going to spoil anything, but if you really don't know anything at all about what Never Let Me Go is about its plot, I would maybe consider stopping the video now, if I were you, just to preserve that blank slate. Moving on, that irritation, that frustration that I was talking about has to do with the fact that obviously, as you read about the character's predicament, I really wanted to learn more about it, and I was really confused about it. I had this curiosity about how this world worked, and in particular I was surprised that nobody cared about it. Is everybody in this world really fine with these kids' fate? Is there any resistance to the way they are being raised? But that said, it's hard to escape the fact that for all that their fate is gruesome and nightmarish, our own world presents ourselves with tons of gruesome, nightmarish injustices that all of us, myself included, accept without batting an eyelid. The main parallel that came to mind as I was reading about these kids' school and these kids' upbringing was with battery farming and other the other horrors of the food processing industry. But even without such a stark comparison, the prison system would be a very clear example of an unjust, oppressive, cruel system that we all take for granted and accept, even while we're aware of the pain that it is inflicting on human beings. To be honest, our entire societies are structured on injustice, on this idea that poor people have to toil and suffer and live in unhealthy situations, unhealthy conditions that really shorten and take decades of their lives, so that the rich and the well-off can live in luxury and comfort. All that the novel does, in the manner of a George Orwell novel, in the manner of great science fiction, is it takes this fact about life and it turns it into a beautiful and really stark metaphor, so that it becomes more visible to us, and we get to appreciate its horror anew. At the same time, though, I have to admit that I have the feeling that this reading, this view of the novel, maybe came from me more than it actually emerged from the text. To put it differently, I didn't necessarily get much of a political vibe from reading Never Let Me Go. I felt that I was bringing that to the book myself. The type of reflection that I definitely grasped from the novel was a reflection on a sort of contrast between an old world that was maybe inefficient, was maybe random, but was also kinder and maybe richer in beauty, and a modern world that is industrialized, it's efficient, it's more sanitized, but it's also cruel. It's a contrast, by the way. It's a sort of view, a comparison that I take some issue with, but it's something that I gathered from the novel, especially from its final paragraphs and its final chapters. Overall, my experience of Never Let Me Go was similar to the experience I had with Camilla Shamsi's Home Fire, another novel that I read earlier this summer, in that at times I found myself really disliking the novels, at least a little bit. Their characters felt a little bit hard to believe for me. Even the supposedly scheming ones were, at the end of the day, fairly good and unidimensional and lacked a certain baseline nastiness that really brings people to life to me when it comes to fiction. But even while I found myself disliking certain aspects of these novels, I also found myself really captivated at other times and really moved emotionally, and these are both books that pushed me to tears. Both of their endings had me in tears. But at the same time, it's a kind of tears, it's the tears of young people who are in love and wish they could be together but can't. It's a somewhat facile type of sadness. It's a bit of a fish in the barrel sort of emotionality. Unfortunately, and I always find this when I criticize a book in one of my reviews, I'm sure it's gonna sound, once I edit this video and put it together, it's gonna sound as if I hated the novel, as if I think it's stupid. That is in no way the case. I actually did like Never Let Me Go, and at times I liked it a lot. I had some issues with it, and I guess I'm still a bit torn about it, but if you are a fan of the novel, and I'm sure tons of you are, because everybody I've ever met has always been quite smitten with the novel. If you are, please don't take my own review as an attack on Ishiguro, as an attack on the novel, because it isn't. Once more, I did like it, and I'm just trying to articulate what my reaction to the book was. And I'm really looking forward to hearing your opinions. I wonder if other people had similarly torn experiences, if all of you are big fans of the novel and of Ishiguro's other novels. I look forward to reading your comments, as always. And I always do read them, even though sometimes it takes me a while to get to them and to reply to them. Thank you so much for watching the video. Thank you to my patrons for supporting the YouTube channel, and bye everybody.